Peter, about your insight as a businessman as well, because a lot of this is about how do we make the money flow, but how do we overcome the barriers to investment, right? And we've got to turn something that may be high risk and margin profitable to something that can actually hit the ground and run and get funded. Do you have experiences in Thailand, or do you see ways forward on that?
Well, it's really up to the government to design the ecosystem to make it work in various ways when it comes to green financing. I think first thing is on disclosure and transparency. So that's really up to the stock exchange, up to the Bank of Thailand, to whether ask for mandatory disclosure in terms of climate risk. Some of the countries in ASEAN have mandatory requests. In Thailand, we don't have. So it's really just, not obligatory for you to do that. I think that's the first thing when it comes to financing, because you need reliable data to do that. Yeah? The second thing is on, the subsidies or the incentive for investment, of course, in terms of tax schemes and things like that, to make sure that we reach that target together within Thailand and ASEAN. I looked up the required investment that ASEAN needs in terms of dollars in order to meet our target in 2030. And that's $4 trillion US accumulative, according to the Boston Consulting Group. Whether it's infrastructure, whether it's low carbon agriculture, whether it's electrification of transportation, decarbonization of energy. So the total, we need $4 trillion altogether. So that's really up to Board of Investment of this region to make it worthwhile in terms of investment, in terms of return of investment. Taxonomy, in terms of tax, I think Singapore is the only country in ASEAN, $4 per ton of carbon release. The remaining countries in ASEAN, we still don't have that, as I understand. In Thailand, we're thinking about that. And then it becomes the issue of equality now, of who gets taxed and who doesn't get taxed. And just transition, just like how you were talking about it. Water tax to the farmers or to golf courses, for example. That's another thing that we definitely need to design the ecosystem to make these kind of things work. So disclosure, transparency, the appetite to invest, and also tax. I think these are a couple of things that can help speed up the transition going forward. So for my case, during the election, these are the three things that I promised the voters. Phasing out coal in 12 years, increase renewable 2 times from 17% to 35%, net metering, and smart grid. So in a nutshell of what I promised, the philosophy behind it is that reducing emission must equal economic empowerment. Reducing emission must equal to economic empowerment. It's democratizing energy. So smart grid and net metering will allow everybody to have access to solar cell energy and be able to sell it back to the government, rather than leaving it to the top 1% of people who have access to solar energy permit, or to hydropower, or to biogas or biomass energy. I mean, you got to be really, really rich. You got to really be the elite to have these kind of transitions or have this kind of supply process. But I wanted to make sure that everybody gets an equal chance, and that's how you speed up the transition. So I answer my own question and combine it with this question.
Very good. Yeah, I think finding these just and fair ways forward is very critical for ASEAN, because we do have quite a lot of economic equality, and the solutions need to be inclusive. They can't just be even more exclusionary than they were before. We can't just have electric vehicles for the rich and then nothing for the poor.
Yes, right? and 60 seconds, please. Just transition when it comes to electric vehicles, for example. For Thailand, and at least for Malaysia, we used to be Detroit of Asia. So a lot of people lose jobs just because of that, right? Yeah. So you want to save the environment while a lot of people will have to go into unemployment. Batteries needs cobalt and nickel, and that's Indonesia, and that's indigenous community in Australia. So how do we balance that up? That's still unresolved issues. 60 seconds.
Oh, big problems. Can we hear from Indonesia? If I can turn now to Mr. Peter, if you'd like to share your experiences from Thailand.
For parliamentarians, right?
Yes.
A couple of things. I think the role of parliamentarian, if you structure it in top 3 priorities that what we do, first is we speak on the behalf of the people. 2 is we provide check and balance to the government. And 3 is we pass progressive laws. So in the last 2 elections that I have participated, the first one and the second one, there's a difference when it comes to speak on the behalf of the people. In every debate that I go to, and that's like hundreds of them, this time last year, the questions from the constituencies will not be about the economy anymore. The first time would be about economy. How much subsidy am I going to get, and how much money are we going to get when we retire, and things like that. But the second election, which was last year, it was all about, environment. Economy is still there, but environment like flash flood, chronic drought, chronic flood, and also extreme heat and forest fire, and all these things are coming up. So to become a member of parliament is your job to speak on the behalf of them in order to bring transparency into the situation and also the problem. Second thing, going through the structure of how I would respond this on the progressive laws. So what we had done is to pass or to submit the draft of the Climate Change Act into Thai Parliament, Clean Air Act into the Parliament, sustainable mining, that's another thing that Thailand lacks. So these top 3 laws will allow the government, whoever governs, that legal basis or power structure to solve the problems. The problem in majority of the countries is that, there's a lot of talking about it, but there's no legal basis for you to stop the source of climate change. So those are the things that are quite important. And the last thing is to provide the check and balance of the government. To follow on your question, in Thailand, there's 0.27% budget allocated to the word climate change. I mean, we look through data analysis and we search the word climate change into the budget. Out of the entire budget, there was only 0.27%, because the question was whether we have that green budget tagging like Indonesia or not. We don't. So we did it ourselves. We digitize it. You use machine learning to find out when it comes to green economy, whether the government walks the talk or not. And the number came out as 0.27%. And we're not going to be able to, achieve the goal of net zero by the year 2065, which is, by the way, 15 years behind Malaysia, which is, by the way, 5 years behind Indonesia. So, we're not very ambitious. We're the last, the least, and the laggard when it comes to these things. So it's my job, as the largest political party in Thailand, even though we're in opposition, to really follow strictly the priorities of becoming a parliamentarian, speak on the behalf of the people, pass progressive laws, and provide check and balance to the government so that they walk the talk. I mean, it's very good that you go to Glasgow and all these COP and you probably, have your own national determined contribution and all, but you don't walk the talk. It doesn't show up in the law. It doesn't show up in the finance. So how are you going to implement it if you don't have the legal basis nor the money to do it? So that's really something that we need to do. That's more of a serious note. I'm going to finish up with a sugar-coated answer. To set a good example. To set a good example of what an MP should do when it comes to climate change. You have to excuse the innocence of my 8-year-old daughter when she came into the room. She asked me, why so many plastic bottles in the room when it comes to climate change conference? And then the second question that she asked me was that, Daddy, where's the refueling bottle for the water? Because at her school, nobody brings plastic bottles anymore. We have this, they have this. They go to the refueling tank and they fill it. And then And then that reminded me of the first time when I became member of parliament about 6 years ago. My first presidency was Land, Natural Resources and Environment of Committee of Thailand. Then I got really embarrassed, asking all these people coming in and talking about ocean plastics and stuff. But then I was sitting at the presidential seat, like in the meeting room, and then we were having a lot of like plastic bags and plastic lunch and all that. So I started becoming embarrassed and conscious. So I started carrying this around. And then I asked the staffer to fill me the water because I talked too much and I needed water. So I took this out and I gave it to the staffer. Can you please fill me the water? You know what they did? They went to that plastic bottle and filled that to me and give it to me. So so that's when I started speaking up in the parliament that, in order for you to incentivize and make it easy for people and set a good example for the private sector or for your constituencies, that you really walk the talk is to set a good example. I think that would be a sugar-coated kind of answer rather than a serious no.
So next step, green procurement by government then. Okay, thank you, Mr. Peter. Sorry, I neglected to give you an introduction, but I think everybody kind of knows who you are.
That's fine. Not a problem.
Just in case.
We save the energy.
Yes, Move Forward Party and growing force in Thai politics.